It was a warm afternoon when General Michelle Harper finished attending a military ceremony in her hometown. She was a woman who had served her country for more than 30 years. Michelle was one of the few black female generals in the entire United States military. She had worked hard, faced many challenges, and earned respect from her colleagues and soldiers. She always carried herself with pride, knowing she had broken many barriers along the way. After the ceremony, Michelle decided to drive home by herself. She felt tired, but happy. The sun was shining, and the streets were busy with people going about their day. Michelle was wearing her military uniform, a symbol of her dedication and honor. As she drove through a neighborhood near the city center, she noticed flashing red and blue lights behind her. A police car was signaling her to pull over. Michelle slowed down and carefully pulled her car to the side of the road. She rolled down her window and waited for the officer to approach. She expected a simple reason, maybe a broken taillight or speeding. But what happened next shocked her. The police officer walked up quickly, his face serious. He asked for her driver's license and registration. Michelle calmly reached into her purse and handed them over. The officer looked at the papers but then stared at Michelle's uniform. His eyes showed doubt and his tone grew colder. "Step out of the car," the officer said firmly. Michelle was surprised. She asked politely why she needed to get out. "I'm just here driving home from work," she said softly. But the officer did not answer. Instead, he called for backup on his radio. Within minutes, 2 more police cars arrived, and 3 officers surrounded Michelle's car. One of them asked her again to step out. She complied quietly. Michelle knew she had done nothing wrong, but she also understood that arguing would not help in this moment as she stepped out. One officer grabbed her arm and began to handcuff her. Michelle was stunned. "Why are you handcuffing me?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The officers said nothing. They treated her roughly as if she was a dangerous criminal. Passersby stopped and stared. Some took out their phones to record what was happening. Michelle felt the eyes of the crowd on her, but she held her head high. She looked at the officers calmly and said, "I am a general in the United States Army. I have served this country with honor for over 3 decades. I deserve respect," but the officers ignored her. They placed her in the back of a police car without giving any clear reason. Michelle's heart ached not from the handcuffs or the rough treatment, but because of the unfairness. She knew this was not about any crime she committed. This was about how she looked. This was about prejudice. Inside the police car, Michelle tried to call her lawyer, but was denied. She asked to call her superiors at the military, but no one listened. Time seemed to slow as she waited. She was handcuffed, alone, and confused. Her uniform, which once brought pride, now seemed to mark her as a suspect in the eyes of these officers. Meanwhile, the crowd around the scene grew restless. Some people whispered to each other, shocked by the treatment of such a respected woman. Others approached the officers, asking why the general was being arrested. The officers gave vague answers or refused to speak. Some witnesses recorded the entire event, hoping their videos would bring justice if the story spread. After nearly an hour, the officers finally released Michelle. They did not apologize or explain why they detained her. Michelle walked away. Quietly, but inside, she was burning with a mix of sadness and anger. She knew she could not let this injustice go unanswered. As she drove away, she called a trusted friend in the military. She told him everything. The friend listened carefully and encouraged her to report the incident to higher authorities. Michelle agreed. She knew that this was not only about her. It was about fighting against a system that treated some people unfairly because of their skin color. Despite the humiliation, Michelle's spirit did not break. She was determined to stand tall and demand justice. She knew that her actions could inspire others who faced similar discrimination, but felt powerless to speak up. That evening, as Michelle sat quietly at home, she thought about her journey. From a young girl dreaming of serving her country to becoming a general, she had overcome many obstacles. But she realized that the fight for equality was far from over. This experience was a painful reminder that even with rank and honor, some people still judged her unfairly. She took a deep breath and made a decision. The next day, she would contact the Pentagon. She would tell her story clearly and demand that those responsible be held accountable. Michelle understood that change often begins when someone refuses to be silent. Her phone call to the Pentagon would soon send shockwaves through the local police department and beyond. But in this moment, she simply sat quietly, gathering her strength for the battles ahead. The sun had set, but Michelle's resolve was brighter than ever. The very next morning, General Michelle Harper woke up with a clear goal in her mind. She knew what she had to do. The painful experience from the day before could not be ignored. It was not just about her, it was about fairness and respect for all people, no matter their skin color or rank. Michelle picked up her phone and dialed the number to the Pentagon, the heart of the United States military. When her call connected, she was greeted by a calm voice on the other side. Michelle took a deep breath and started to explain everything. She told them how she was stopped by local police officers while driving home, how she was handcuffed without any real reason, and how she felt humiliated and hurt. She spoke carefully but firmly, making sure every detail was clear. The person listening on the other end was surprised and concerned. It was not common for a general to report such an incident. The Pentagon had strict rules about how military personnel should be treated, especially by law enforcement. Hearing about a respected general being treated unfairly raised serious alarms. After Michelle finished her report, the Pentagon promised to take immediate action. They said they would start an investigation to understand exactly what happened and to ensure that justice was done. Michelle felt a small relief. But she also knew this was just the beginning of a long process. News about the incident and Michelle's call to the Pentagon spread quickly. Within hours, military officials began to speak privately about the case. Many were shocked and saddened by what happened. They praised Michelle for her bravery in speaking out and promised to support her. Meanwhile, in the local police department, the story created a storm. The officers involved were called into meetings with their supervisors. They were told to stay silent while the investigation took place. Some of the officers looked worried, but others acted as if nothing was wrong. They did not expect the general's call to reach such high levels. The city's mayor and police chief also became aware of the situation. They faced pressure from the public and the military to respond quickly. The mayor released a statement saying that the city would cooperate fully with any investigations and that they were committed to fair and just law enforcement. Back at the Pentagon, the military started gathering all information related to the case. They requested video footage from the police department and nearby businesses. They asked for witness statements and reviewed the general's record of service and behavior. Everything pointed to one conclusion: the treatment of General Harper was unjustified and showed clear signs of racial bias. As the investigation moved forward, the media picked up the story. Reporters interviewed witnesses who had seen the general being handcuffed. They shared videos that showed how the officers acted aggressively without a clear reason. The public reaction was strong. Many people expressed outrage over how a high-ranking officer had been treated so poorly at the same time. Michelle continued her duties as a general, but remained focused on the case. She spoke quietly with friends and colleagues about how important it was to use her voice to fight for change. Many in the military reached out to her, offering support and encouragement. They admired her courage and wanted to stand beside her. In the police department, the officers involved faced increasing scrutiny. Their past records were checked, and it was discovered that some had previous complaints related to unfair treatment of citizens. The officers were placed on temporary leave while the investigation continued. This news caused tension within the department. Some officers worried about their jobs, while others demanded changes in how things were done. Community leaders also joined the conversation. They organized meetings to discuss how to improve relations between police and citizens, especially people of color. They invited Michelle to speak at one event, where she shared her experience and called for respect, understanding, and justice for all. The pressure grew on local officials to act decisively. The mayor promised new training programs for officers to recognize and prevent racial bias. He also committed to creating better oversight to hold police accountable. The police chief announced plans to review department policies and make necessary reforms. Michelle watched these developments carefully, She hoped that her actions would lead to real change, not just promises. She believed that no one should ever be treated the way she was, especially someone who had dedicated their life to serving others. At the Pentagon, a special team was assigned to ensure the investigation was fair and thorough. They interviewed Michelle again to gather more details and asked for her recommendations on how to prevent such incidents in the future. Michelle suggested better communication between military personnel and local law enforcement, as well as mandatory training on racial sensitivity and respect. The Pentagon also planned to hold meetings with police leaders to discuss collaboration and improve mutual understanding. They wanted to make sure that every member of the military and police felt safe and respected in their communities. As days passed, the story continued to gain attention nationwide. Many people, both in and out of the military, expressed their support for Michelle. They shared her story on social media, wrote letters to officials, and called for justice. The event became a symbol of the ongoing struggle against racism and unfair treatment. Through all this, Michelle remained calm and strong. She understood the weight of her position and the importance of using her experience to help others. Knew it was not easy to stand up against powerful institutions, but she was determined to do so with dignity and respect. One afternoon, Michelle received a call from a senior official at the Pentagon. The investigation was moving forward, and the officers involved would face serious consequences. The official thanked her for her bravery and assured her that the military would continue to support her. Michelle felt a deep sense of relief, but also knew the fight was not over. There was still much work to be done to heal the wounds caused by this incident and to build a better future. In the following weeks, Michelle began speaking publicly about her experience. She appeared at community events, military gatherings, and on news programs. She talked about the need for understanding, respect, and reform in law enforcement. Her words inspired many to think differently and to join efforts for change. The local police department also started to change. New leaders were brought in, and policies were updated. Officers received training to recognize bias and to treat everyone fairly, no matter their background. The city created a task force to oversee police conduct and to listen to the community's concerns. Michelle's call to the Pentagon did more than just expose a terrible incident. It sparked a movement, showed that even in difficult times, one person's voice can make a difference. Her courage reminded others that fairness and justice must be defended by all, especially those who serve. As the story spread, many people learned important lessons about respect and equality. They realized that no matter what uniform someone wears or where they come from, everyone deserves to be treated with kindness and dignity. Michelle Harper's experience was painful, but it became a turning point. It opened the door to conversations that had long been needed. It proved that standing up for what is right can change lives not only for one person, but for a whole community. The investigation into what happened to General Michelle Harper quickly became a big deal. After her brave call to the Pentagon, many people wanted to know the truth. The military and federal authorities worked together to find out exactly how the police officers acted and why they treated the general so badly. The first step was to gather all the evidence. Investigators asked the police department to share every video, report, and communication related to the incident. They also visited the place where the event happened to talk to people who saw it with their own eyes. Many witnesses were willing to speak up. Some had even recorded videos on their phones, showing the general being handcuffed without a clear reason. The videos were clear. They showed how calm and respectful General Harper was, how she answered questions politely, and how the police officers acted in a way that seemed harsh and unfair. This evidence made it hard for anyone to deny that something wrong had taken place. At the same time, investigators looked at the officers involved in the incident. They reviewed their work history and found troubling signs. Some officers had been accused before of treating people unfairly, especially people of color. These past complaints showed a pattern that raised serious concerns about their behavior and attitude. The officers were placed on leave during the investigation. This meant they could not work as police while the authorities examined the facts. This decision was important to show that the case was being taken seriously. It also allowed the department to start thinking about changes in how officers were trained and managed in the media. The story spread quickly. Newspapers, television, and online platforms covered every new detail. Many journalists talked about the general's courage and how her experience revealed a deeper problem in the police force. Some reporters interviewed civil rights leaders, who said the incident was an example of systemic racism, meaning unfair treatment of people based on their race, built into some parts of society. The public's reaction was strong, and people expressed anger and sadness that such a respected military leader could be treated with disrespect and suspicion simply because of her skin color. Social media exploded with messages of support for General Harper and calls for justice. Because of this pressure, the city's leaders promised to make changes. The mayor said that the police department would receive new training to help officers understand bias and how to treat all people fairly. He also promised better oversight to prevent future incidents. Community groups organized meetings to talk about how to improve relations between police and residents. They invited Michelle to speak at one of these meetings. When she stood in front of the crowd, her voice was steady and calm. She shared her story but also spoke about hope and the need for understanding. Michelle told the audience that the incident was painful, but it should not break their spirits. She said that change comes when people speak up and work together. Her words inspired many to join efforts for better treatment and respect for everyone. Meanwhile, inside the military, Michelle's story sparked important discussions. Leaders realized that soldiers and officers could face unfair treatment even outside of war zones. They began developing programs to support military personnel in their communities and to build stronger partnerships with local law enforcement. The Pentagon decided to hold special meetings with police chiefs from around the country. The goal was to share lessons from Michelle's experience and to encourage better training and cooperation. This was a step forward in making sure that the respect given to military personnel did not stop at the base gates but followed them. Wherever they went, back in the police department, some officers felt the pressure of the investigation and public opinion. There were debates about how to improve the culture of the department. Many officers admitted that more training was needed to address unconscious biases attitudes. People might not even realize they have, but that affect how they act. The police chief announced a plan to bring in experts who would teach officers about cultural sensitivity and fairness. He said that every officer must treat everyone with dignity and respect, no matter their background. As the investigation continued, the officers involved faced serious consequences. The evidence showed that their actions were not acceptable. They were disciplined. And some faced possible criminal charges for violating the general's rights. This was a warning to others that misconduct would not be tolerated. It also reassured the public that the system could hold people accountable, even when those people worked in law enforcement. The story did not stop at the police department. Many organizations began using Michelle's case as an example of why more work was needed to fight racism and injustice. Schools, businesses, and community groups held discussions about fairness and respect. The hope was to create a society where no one would face unfair treatment because of their skin color. For Michelle, the journey was difficult but important. She continued her work as a general, leading soldiers and serving her country. But she also became a symbol of courage and hope for many people. She worked with groups that aimed to improve police training and to support victims of discrimination. Michelle believed that sharing her experience could help prevent others from going through the same pain. Through it all, Michelle never lost sight of what mattered most: justice, respect, and kindness. She knew that these values were the foundation of a strong and fair society. Her story reminded many people that change is possible when one person stands up for what is right. It showed that even in the face of unfairness, dignity, and courage can shine brightly. The officers who had mistreated Michelle faced their own struggles as their careers unraveled. Some tried to defend their actions, but the facts were clear. The community demanded better from those who were sworn to protect and serve. The police department began rebuilding its reputation. New policies were created to increase transparency. Citizens were invited to participate in reviews of police conduct. This was a new chapter, one focused on healing and improvement. Michelle's experience sparked a larger movement. People from all walks of life came together to speak out against racism and to demand change. They shared stories, organized events, and worked to build bridges between communities. This movement helped to raise awareness and to encourage empathy. It reminded everyone that no matter who we are, we deserve to be treated with respect and fairness. Michelle's name became known beyond the military and her city. She was invited to speak at conferences and events across the country. Her message was clear and powerful. Courage in the face of injustice can change the world, in the end. The investigation and its results were a step forward. But Michelle knew that the real work was ongoing. Changing attitudes and systems takes time and effort. She remained committed to her mission to serve her country and to fight for justice. It's not only in uniform, but also in everyday life. Her story was a reminder that standing up to unfairness is not easy, but it is necessary. It is a call for all people to treat one another with kindness, respect, and understanding. And it showed that when one voice speaks the truth, it can inspire many others to do the same. The officers involved in the incident with General Michelle Harper soon faced the consequences of their actions. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that their treatment of her was unacceptable and showed serious misconduct. The police department could no longer ignore the damage their behavior had caused, both to the general and to the community's trust. The officers were suspended from their duties while the inquiry continued. This was a difficult time for them. Some tried to defend their actions, saying they were only doing their job. But the evidence against them was strong, and many people in the city demanded justice for what happened. City officials and the police leadership realized they had to act quickly to restore faith in the police force. The mayor held press conferences explaining the steps the city was taking to address the issue. He promised to hold the officers accountable and to make sure something like this would not happen again. The police chief announced a plan to overhaul training programs. Officers would now receive more education on how to recognize and avoid racial bias. The goal was to help police treat everyone with fairness and respect, regardless of their background. The department also promised to improve transparency by allowing independent observers to review complaints against officers. The community watched these promises carefully. Many citizens had lost trust in the police because of years of similar stories about unfair treatment and abuse. But Michelle's case brought hope that change was possible. Local leaders, activists, and ordinary people came together to discuss what the city could do better. Michelle herself became a key voice in these conversations. She worked with community organizations and city officials to help design programs that would build better relationships between the police and the people they served. She believed that understanding and communication were the first steps toward real change. During this time, the officers involved faced formal hearings. Evidence of their behavior was presented, and witnesses, including Michelle, spoke about the pain and humiliation caused by their actions. The hearings were tough for everyone, but they showed that no one was above the law or beyond accountability. The officers were eventually fired from the police force. Some also faced legal charges for violating Michelle's rights. This sent a clear message that discrimination and abuse of power not be tolerated. The community responded positively to these outcomes. Many saw this as a victory for justice and fairness. It also gave courage to others who had faced similar treatment but were afraid to speak up. At the same time, the police department began to focus on rebuilding its reputation. New leaders were hired who promised to bring a fresh approach to law enforcement. They emphasized respect for human rights and community engagement. The city launched several initiatives to improve trust. Officers started attending community events, not as enforcers, but as partners. They listened to residents' concerns and worked together to solve problems. This new approach slowly helped heal some of the divisions between police and citizens. Michelle continued to play an important role. She spoke at workshops and training sessions, sharing her experience and helping officers understand the impact of their actions. Her presence reminded everyone that behind the uniform was a person deserving of dignity. Her leadership inspired other military members and community leaders to join efforts for change. They formed alliances to promote fairness, equality, and respect for all people. These efforts extended beyond the city, influencing discussions across the country. Michelle also used her story to encourage young people. She spoke at schools and youth centers, telling students that no matter what challenges they faced, they could stand up for themselves and others. Her message was about courage, hope, and the power of a single voice to make a difference. Meanwhile, the city implemented policies to increase oversight of the police. A civilian review board was created made up of community members who could review complaints and recommend actions. This gave citizens a stronger role in holding law enforcement accountable. The police department adopted body cameras for all officers. These devices recorded interactions between police and the public, providing evidence that could protect both sides. The cameras helped reduce conflicts and built more trust in how situations were handled. Community members began to feel safer and more respected. Neighborhoods saw fewer complaints about police behavior. People started to believe that the system could work fairly for everyone. Michelle's case also caught the attention of lawmakers. Some introduced bills to improve police training nationwide, requiring education on racial bias and cultural sensitivity. These laws aimed to prevent incidents like the one she experienced from happening anywhere else. Her story became a symbol of what could be achieved when people refused to accept injustice. It showed that even when faced with unfairness, standing up and speaking out could lead to powerful change. At home, Michelle reflected on all that had happened. The experience was painful, but it had opened doors for progress. She felt proud of the difference she helped make and hopeful for the future. She knew that the work was not finished. Changing attitudes and systems takes time, patience, and ongoing effort. But she was ready to keep fighting for fairness and respect wherever they were needed. Michelle's courage reminded many that no matter one's rank, background, or color, everyone deserves dignity and justice. Her story inspired people to believe in a better world where kindness and fairness guide actions. As the officers who wronged her faced their consequences, the city moved forward with new energy. The police department became a place where respect was a priority, and the community was heard. Michelle's journey showed that even the hardest battles could be won with strength, honesty, and hope. And it proved that one person's voice could change not just their own life, but the lives of many others. After the difficult events and the investigations, General Michelle Harper began to see the true power of her actions. What had started as a painful and unfair experience grew into a movement for change, not just in her city but across the country. Michelle knew that real change did not happen overnight. It required patience, hard work, and the courage to keep pushing forward. Michelle worked closely with many groups' military leaders, community organizers, police officials, and lawmakers. Together, they focused on making sure that no one else would face the kind of treatment she had experienced. She helped develop new programs aimed at teaching respect, fairness, and understanding to police officers everywhere. One of the important parts of this work was training. Police officers were taught to recognize their own biases, even those they did not realize they had. They learned better ways to communicate with people from different backgrounds. This training helped officers approach their work with more kindness and respect. Michelle also worked on creating stronger connections between the military and local communities. She believed that when different groups understood each other better, it could reduce fear and misunderstandings. She often spoke about how trust was the foundation of safety and peace in any community. As these programs grew, Michelle became a respected leader beyond the military. She was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and government meetings. Her story inspired many people, especially young women and people of color, showing them that they could stand strong and make a difference. Michelle never forgot the painful moment when the police handcuffed her without cause, but she refused to let that moment define her. Instead, she used it as fuel to fight for justice and equality. Her courage showed others that even when faced with unfairness, they could rise above it. The city where the incident happened saw many changes. The police department became a model for others, showing how to rebuild trust and work with the community. New leaders focused on fairness and transparency. They listened to the people and worked hard to correct past mistakes. The civilian review board grew stronger and more involved. It gave people a real voice in how police officers behaved. It helped prevent abuses of power and made officers more careful in their work. Michelle's experience also affected the military. The Pentagon introduced programs to support soldiers and officers in dealing with discrimination. They worked to ensure that military members felt safe and respected, both in service and in their everyday lives. Throughout this time, Michelle remained humble and focused on her mission. She understood that real change came from many people. Working together, she encouraged others to speak up when they saw injustice and to support one another. Her story spread beyond the United States. People in other countries heard about her courage and the changes she helped bring. It became an example of how standing up for what is right could lead to better communities and stronger societies. Michelle also found time to mentor young people. She believed in the power of education and guidance. She wanted future generations to grow up in a world where fairness and respect were the norm. She often said, "One voice can make a difference. When we stand together, we are stronger." We must never be afraid to speak out for justice. The officers who had mistreated Michelle faced their own difficult journeys. Some found it hard to accept the consequences. Others took the chance to learn from their mistakes and change. Their stories became warnings to others about the importance of respect and fairness. Michelle hoped that her story would help prevent future mistakes like hers. She believed that, with continued effort, society could become kinder and more just. Her life was an example of strength, courage, and hope. She showed that, even when life is unfair, we have the power to change it. By refusing to be silent, Michelle inspired many to stand up and fight for a better world. In the end, her experience was not just about one painful event. It was about a journey toward justice that brought people together. It was about building trust, breaking down walls, and creating a future where everyone is treated with dignity. Michelle's story reminds us that fairness and respect are the foundation of peace. It teaches us that courage can change lives and that no one should ever be judged by the color of their skin. Her call to the Pentagon was more than a report. It was a spark that lit the way for many. It showed that one person's courage can bring light to the darkest places. And so, General Michelle Harper continues to serve, not only as a military leader, but as a champion for justice and equality. Her journey is far from over, but her legacy is clear. Standing up for what is right can change the world.